Hi friends, I'm Scott Giles and welcome to Power Talk, my podcast here on Facebook Live and YouTube. I cover topics related to spirituality, hypno-coaching, and the hypnotic arts and sciences in general. If you'd like to know more about my professional work, check out my website, which I'll tag at the end of this video. Today, I want to talk about something pretty much all of us want for ourselves. We want to be successful at what we set ourselves to do. Therefore, I want to talk about what can get in the way of that and what you can do about it. Now, the only way I know how to do this is to talk about my personal experience in the hope that what I went through might also be helpful to you. First, I had to learn not to be so trusting. Second, I had to be willing to risk giving up comforting fantasies and take the risk to seek to make my fantasies real. Third, there were some hard truths that I had to face. Let's take those in order. About being too trusting. The Baron de Montesquieu, a French philosopher who died in 1755, wrote, "We receive 3 educations, one from our parents, one from our schoolmasters, and one from the world. The third contradicts all the first 2 teach us." That's a bit of an overstatement, but we want to be successful. We get the education and preparation we think we should get, but often discover that things don't work out the way we hoped they would. The world often doesn't behave the way we expected it to do or the way we were taught that it would. Growing up, I was taught that people were basically good and that most people lived in accordance with ethical and altruistic principles. Life, however, taught me that while some people are like that, a great many are not. They're out for themselves, and my cats are more altruistic than they are. As an example, early in my career, I had someone steal from me, someone I thought was a friend and therefore trusted. It was an expensive but a valuable lesson. No one was going to create my success for me. I would have to do it myself. Therefore, I figured out what I needed to maintain a level of suspicion about the motivations of other people and mostly to rely on myself. This was something I learned in the school of life. My parents and school turned out to be too idealistic and their lessons too optimistic. I needed to be a lot more suspicious and careful. And this was the first thing that got in the way of my success. I was too trusting, and there were people who tried to use me. The second thing was to be willing to give up my comforting fantasies. Like most people, I comforted myself with fantasies about how successful I might be in the future. In my career, I became a clergy person. I served 2 congregations in my 13-year career as a parish minister, and I did an okay job, but parish ministry was never the form of ministry I wanted to do. I wanted to do what I do now, which is called a community ministry. And community ministry means you work with the public beyond the walls of the standard congregation, and you support yourself by charging the people who benefit from your work. The reason I didn't go directly from school into the work I wanted to do was because my denomination had rules that you had to serve a parish first before they would give you approval to do any sort of community ministry. And second, because everyone I knew in the denominational hierarchy said that the ministry I wanted to do couldn't succeed. No one is going to go to a minister, for goodness sake, when they want help with a medical problem. So I did my bit in the parish, but lingered there longer than I should have, because I was afraid to chase my dream and maybe fail as everyone told me I would, and then I couldn't use that fantasy of what it would be like when I finally did the ministry I wanted to do. I could use that fantasy to comfort myself when things were difficult. Now, everyone said it wouldn't succeed, and they were wrong. When I made the jump into a ministry of medical hypnotism, I was successful almost immediately, to the point where I regret having waited so long. I should have made the jump much sooner. Asking myself why I delayed basically 10 years longer than I needed to, I realized that whenever things were rough, I would comfort myself by saying in my mind that someday I would have a big, successful, profitable hypnosis ministry, and all the stuff I put up with as a parish minister wouldn't matter, and that fantasy did make me feel better. The problem was that I found I was reluctant to try to create that ministry, the one I longed for, because if I tried and failed, I would no longer have the comforting fantasy. If I actually tried to make the fantasy real, it would either work or I'd have to face the rest of my life without that thing to comfort me, because the fantasy had been attempted and it hadn't worked out. So actually trying to be successful meant giving up the fantasy of being successful someday while never actually taking the risk. Finally, I had to face some hard truths, because no one was encouraging to me other than Lindsay, my wife, who was the only supporter I had when I changed course and hung out my hypnotist shingle. I had to resolve to give up looking for the approval of others. That was tough. We all want that sort of approval. But to be successful, you may have to give up hope of that and follow your own internal genius. Next, I realized that money couldn't be the marker of my success. Now, most people judge their success by how much money they make, and I do earn much more than I ever did as a parish minister. But at the start, things were lean for the first few years, and I worked through my startup curve a little bit in a hand-to-mouth fashion the first year or two. What kept me going was the joy I found in the work I was doing and how fulfilled I felt as a person and as a minister. The money did eventually materialize, but there wasn't much of it to start, so I couldn't look to that as validation. Then I had to realize it would take time. There would be a startup curve. Now, the world is full of people who want to sell you their get-rich-quick schemes. Multi-level marketing systems are notorious for this. I had to face that this was going to be hard work to get going. As I knew I wanted to do a hypnosis ministry, I had done all my continuing education as a parish minister with that ultimate goal in mind. So when I made my jump, I had all the classwork I needed. I just had to sit for the certification exams, which I did and passed on my first try. So I'd given myself a huge head start. I often joke that I was an overnight success after 10 years of hard work. But I still had to do the startup curve. So those were the things that were in the way of my success. I was too trusting of others, and I did get taken. I had to be willing to give up my comforting fantasy and take the risk of seeking to make it real, and there were some realities I had to face. Money would be tight at first. There would be a startup curve. Those two hard truths meant I had to be willing to work in service to my goals without having anything objective, like money, to validate my path until some time had passed. And I would have to do a lot of hard work because there was no need for escaping that startup curve. But all this said, my decision to chase my dream and become who I wanted to be was one of the best decisions I've ever made. It was absolutely worth the risk, and the reality check from the world at large about what other people would be like and about how much work the beginning would take probably was helpful, because it kept me from making dumb mistakes as I learned to be more suspicious, to set my marker something other than money. It was worth it. And it will be for you too if you seek to chase your dream for yourself and successfully become who you long to be. Hey, thank you for your time and attention today. I'll be back next week with a different talk on a different subject. I'd like to invite you to join me. It does help me if you let others know about my videos, so please like, share, and subscribe. Stay well and stay safe.